Hi, my name is Tara Kachaturoff, and I'm the host of Michigan Entrepreneur, where we feature businesses from startup to stellar. Today I have as my special guest Frankie Baghdad, who is author, speaker, and owner of Fab Consulting. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on today because we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, including your brand new book, which I'm really excited about, which is really amazing. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of unpack all the details of what you're doing in your consulting practice.
Yeah, sure. So I've been incredibly lucky to have a very interesting career. I started out with an elementary education degree from Michigan State, and was so lucky to end up with a job at Eaton Academy around here in Birmingham. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful place. And that's where I really learned about kids who learn differently. Went ahead and got my master's in special education, went into teacher consulting, took a little segue to overnight camp for 5 years. And then I really realized that one of my passions was understanding behavior for kids and supporting parents. I went back, I got my social work degree, and that's how I ended up here.
And I think were you working on the social work degree during 2020? Did you start it during 2020? Or?
I did. Okay. So, you know, after those first 2 weeks of sitting in our pajamas at home when we shut down, in my normal fashion, I needed a project. I had just started Fab Consulting, and things had really completely stalled. With all that uncertainty in the world. And I went back to school online, University of Kentucky. I always joke people were buying fuzzy slippers as their pandemic purchases, and I bought another master's degree.
Good
so
for
that's
you.
what I did. Thank
Good
you.
for you. So you did the whole degree online?
I did.
Wow, and that's it's not always easy, and because you have a cohort group probably, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
So you're and doing group projects and all that. It's a lot of work.
It gave me a whole lot of empathy for our kids who were learning online, and middle schoolers who were navigating 8 online classes. And I was thinking, wow, if this is hard for me, I can't imagine how it's feeling for our 11-year-olds.
Yeah, being on Zoom 8 hours a day.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that you started Fab Consulting also during that 2020, or was it?
So it was just before. I officially launched in October of 2020, and in February we were really getting going. I had a really full calendar of workshops, and you know, in March, as we all know, things just halted like we've never seen before.
Yeah, it was an interesting time, but a lot of quiet to get a lot of homework done, right?
Yes. I definitely took advantage of that, for sure.
So it's interesting, you talked about your earlier education, special ed background and things like that. Now, what was it that like precipitated you even going into this field, you know, this particular area? Because there's so many different areas you can go into if you want to be teaching and things like that. What was it? Was there something from your past, something about just an interest, a personal interest?
Yeah, so many things. And what was so fascinating working at Eaton with these amazing educators is everybody had a story of why they were there. We had teachers who were driving an hour a morning to get there in this special school. You know, I grew up at a private school. It was very rigorous, a dual curriculum type school, and it was tough to stay caught up. I was really actually privileged in the 80s to be diagnosed with what we were calling ADD then. And I say privileged because even now, girls are not recognized as much as struggling with that. And that helped me understand a bit about myself. But I really didn't see myself as a capable student. When I transitioned into public school, also a rigorous curriculum, but not that dual curriculum piece, I started to realize that I had some major strengths and major weaknesses, and it took me a long time to have any confidence in my academic ability. So when I had this privilege of helping students really discover their strengths, it just motivated me, and I love that opportunity. My favorite subject to teach when I taught elementary school was math, and I
love math.
Oh, so I'm like terrible at math. But
are you really?
But you know what?
I love it.
I understood it at a deeper level than I ever did when I learned how to teach it. So yes, parts of it I do love now, and I love being able to make it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like a foreign language for so many people. It was for me, and to be able to make it visual. And so that was just so motivating to me. Really the privilege of helping kids and teens know where they shine and where they're amazing. It was just something I couldn't get enough of.
So what are some of your strengths that you discovered in like your youth years and your teen years? What are some of those strengths?
So I realized that I was really a storyteller. It's interesting, when I think back of my writing education, I see red pen, right? Maybe kids don't know what I'm talking about now, but I just see all the marks of the incorrect spelling and the commas I missed, which I still miss. And I always thought I was pretty terrible at it, but I realized I was good at talking and sharing and storytelling. My father, his side gig was storytelling. He he liked to write folk tales and tell stories.
Oh, wow,
And
that's fascinating.
I somehow inherited that. And you know, as I got older and blogging came about, that was an amazing opportunity, because as we were talking earlier about this sort of new type of writing that people are really resonating with, where you're talking. It's like talking to a friend. That's what blogging is. So it allowed for this more casual writing. I didn't have to follow the structure that was so hard for me. And also recognizing my weaknesses. I have great editors, and they catch all those commas I put in the wrong place. I know what I can't do myself, and that is so powerful.
And there's also Pro Writing Aid, which is a fantastic piece of software
yes.
that we all use at the end to polish our final
Yeah.
articles before we send them out. That is so amazing. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because of the comments I had made even before you knew what I was going to ask you about your book. Because the book is amazing, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Let me just ask you, what's one more strength that you discovered as you were growing up that has like served you now? What's another strength? Because I'm sure we're going to see this in the rest of the interview.
So when you read about ADHD, you'll hear a lot about hyperfocus. And sometimes parenting a child with ADHD, that can be difficult. You have the kid who's building an amazing Lego structure, and you want to get them on the bus and you can't get them to stop, right? Like I get those stories all the time from parents, like, please help, I can't get them to stop when they're in the zone. But as I got older and I learned how to harness that and when to turn it on and when to turn it off, I noticed that I could be incredibly quick with things, and I could process quickly and come up with creative solutions quickly. And sometimes what I accomplished in 2 hours was what my colleagues were accomplishing in a day. I had to figure out how to turn it on and turn it off, so it was focus on the right things. But it's really an incredible gift when you realize how to use it.
That's great. And I love that you have worked on how you can take those amazing skills and roll them into your entrepreneurial journey, because it's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about some of the services that you're offering at Fab Consulting, because you offer a wide range of things that I know are important to parents and just individuals and educators and people running camps, because you're also involved in the whole camp thing, which is kind of cool. One of the things that that I know you focus on is school consulting, observing, and training. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do there, and then we'll kind of unpack the rest as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with a number of area schools.
Are these public or private institutions?
Right now, I'm working with a bunch of private schools.
Okay.
Because public schools actually have really intelligently created consultant positions, often within their public school frameworks, which is great. So I am working in a bunch of private schools. I get called in when they have a child that they're just not sure how to help them meet their highest potential. So a child that's struggling behaviorally or academically or socially, and the advantage is really a fresh set of eyes. I come in, I don't get a whole lot of information beforehand. I like to really just watch and see what I see, except that, oh, you're watching that kid in the red hat. That might be it. And I watch, and I try to really create an objective observation. And my first step is really to ask a ton of questions about what's going on and what they've tried and what's been difficult. And then I work with the teachers and even sometimes the parents to create new protocols and setups and strategies in the classroom to help these children succeed. I really try to come from a strength-based model. I look at what's going really well and build on that.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting. So they can bring you in on a needed basis.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful resource for them too. So they don't
Yes.
have to have a full-time person
Yes.
because it's expensive to have a full
It is.
salaried
Yeah. Yes,
person.
yes, absolutely.
And another area that you're also working in is camper care consulting. What's that? That sounds fun.
Yes.
Camping.
Exactly.
And how did you get into that particular area?
So I was also very privileged to spend 5 summers at Tamarack Camps, a local overnight camp, where that was really my role, is what we called camper care. So we had a wonderful inclusion program for kids, teens, and young adults who were coming to us with disabilities and needed some great supports. We also had kids who were struggling and maybe we wouldn't expect it, and their parents might not expect it. Camp is just so different than school. It's all social, and sometimes things came up and I would support those kids as well. So I've stayed connected with my camp colleagues, and what camps are struggling with mirrors what society is struggling with. We're hearing a lot about the mental health crisis in this country, and it's real, and kids are going to camp and that's following them. We have children and teens and adults who are desperately trying to access mental health resources, and wait lists are long. Insurance can be a challenge. There's all kinds of barriers.
There's waitlisting for
Oh,
kids
yes.
that need mental
Yes.
health services?
Yes, most practices locally are on wait lists right now. It's
You're
very
kidding me.
tough, yes. Especially for kids and teens that need those after school slots. There's just so many slots of the day.
Yeah.
So that's a tough thing, and pulling a child out of school for once every 6 month dentist appointment is one thing, but really for therapy to be most successful, you want every week, every other week, so that becomes
Right.
a barrier. So camps are really asking for more support. How do we support children and teens and our staff who are struggling with mental health? How do we act proactively? How do we understand really what kinds of concerns they're coming with? Camp is such a warm and welcoming place that sometimes kids share for the first time with their 18-year-old counselors.
Right.
So how do we make sure our counselors are equipped for that?
So, kind of segueing into the other part, you do student workshops on mental health. Were you doing this, is this more of a thing after the pandemic, or were a lot of these things happening but just not being talked about as much before the pandemic? Where this has
Good
blown up
question.
into a big problem, I'm
Yeah.
sure, because I hear from my friends who have kids who are really struggling. They're having serious problems with many of their children, all ages.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Even though things are somewhat normal, they're not normal at home. They're really tough.
Right, right. I'll say when I started in camping in 2015, we were already seeing, I think the front cover of Time magazine sometime in that year talked about a mental health crisis. But it wasn't getting really the attention it needed. And when I first started in camping, we thought we were really cutting edge because we were making sure to train our staff working with our teens, with our high schoolers, on understanding suicide risk. What was evident immediately is that we needed it for our staff working with 4th and 5th graders. It
For
wasn't
suicide risk?
absolutely.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not. Self-harm, suicide
no idea.
risk, yep, extreme anxiety, mental health. It was no longer and is no longer a teen problem. We're seeing it younger and younger. Kids are exposed to different things today than they were when I grew up. And that was something that the mental health professional community was already shouting about earlier. The pandemic really shined a light on it, which is positive. It also certainly complicated it, which is difficult when you take people struggling and you isolate them socially for maybe a couple years, depending on family situation. all kinds of things come up. For some kids, it might have had a positive effect. You know, hunkering down and being home with your parents might feel good. It took away some of the social anxiety. It might have been a nice respite, a little bit of a silver lining to this shutdown. And for some, you know, people, it really had the opposite effect. So we're definitely seeing more need. I also think parents spent time with their children in an unprecedented way, right? We keep hearing that word.
Right, yeah.
So you notice. Which is a good thing. They notice their kids struggling in all kinds of ways that they might not have as quickly if we were doing a more traditional, they go to school all day model.
So what are some of the kinds of things you're doing in that area right now? Are you doing consultations with parents? Are you in the private schools doing programs of any sort? What's your role in all of this?
So
with your background?
Yeah, so I'm doing a couple different things. Because I have that education background and mental health, it allows me to look at things a bit differently. So for example, I was so lucky last fall I spoke with the students at Oakland Early College, which is a high school program through West Bloomfield Schools, where they partner with OCC. It's a wonderful, smaller high school program, and we talked about social anxiety, time management, and all of these adjustments that were really challenging as they went back to school full time. That particular school program had stayed hybrid the whole 2020-21 school year. So when they came back, all of a sudden, it was uncomfortable, really, to be in a classroom full of other teens, and how do they manage that? How do they not take on the stress of others? So we had a really nice talk about some tips and tools they could to take care of themselves. I also spend 2 days a week in my private practice seeing therapy patients. I have a lot of kids and teens. I have an equal amount of parents I meet with separately, just to give them ideas and perspective on how to best parent a child who needs extra supports. How really to do a lot of things I talk about in the book. What do you do when you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids and they have different needs? That's complicated. So we brainstorm together.
Yeah, I like that you're seeing the kids, but also the parents,
Yes.
and separately, so that you can have those frank conversations
Yes.
and they can ask the questions they need to ask. But yeah, question, because I don't know how that works with children. When children are in therapy, is the parent in the room with the child, or is the child by themselves with the therapist? How does that work?
So there's all different kinds of setups that work well depending on the age. I typically do a bit of both. It's nice once the child's comfortable and the parent's comfortable. It's important too. And we've built rapport to give the child that space to be just with me and be able to share whatever they need to share. And it's also great to talk together as a team. And I really guide the parents in problem solving with the child's input for things that are happening at home that are difficult.
It's probably kind of neat for the child to also see you talking to all of them together, so that it's all inclusive and we're here together as a team.
Exactly.
And yeah, I like that. I like that. You know, and this is kind of a great segue to talk a little bit about your book. Let me just grab a copy here so I can hold it up. So this is the book. It's I Love My Kids, But I Don't Always Like Them. Great title by Frankie Baghdad. This book, I got to read, and this is your family on the cover?
Yeah.
Your family?
Yeah.
I got to read an excerpt of this that's on your site, your website. And the interesting thing about it, I was reading the excerpt the other day as I was prepping for this show, and I immediately connected with your account manager and told her, this book is so amazing. I was so captivated. I mean, I read a lot, I write a lot, I've written my own novel. I mean, like, I'm big into the writing, have my whole life. It was so good. I was like reading it online, and I'm like, I was so captivated. I can't even begin to tell you. And like, this is so well written. I get on my email after I finish the excerpt. I write her and I said, she needs to write novels. She needs to write novels with these themes. This is such good writing. It's captivating. I was so in the story. I just wanted to know what happened next. It was so good. And what I loved about it, it was conversational. You really connected with the reader. If I was a mom, I would feel totally heard by the way you described what you were going through in your experiences. It's such a good read. I mean, this is, I don't want to sit there and just say it's so wonderful. It truly is, and I would not say that if not for just, I went out of my way to write her, and I told my friend about it later in the day. I was just so amazed.
Thank you.
Because you're taking a really hard subject, dealing with kids with a lot of issues. It's stressing everybody out. It's a book that just came out. I mean, it's fabulous.
Thank you.
So in this book, it's called Expert Advice for Parents of Challenging Children. Why don't you tell me a little bit about who the book is for exactly? What's the profile of your ideal reader, just so we know?
Sure. So I really wrote this book as a survival guide for parenting those kids. I would say like ages 5 to 14, once they're in kindergarten, school age. What I found as a parent is there were so many great books and resources when you were pregnant, when you had an infant, when you had toddlers. But then what happens when you're sending them off to school? And I found myself, even in the field, really sort of shocked at this bigger kids, bigger problems sort of feeling, right? It's true, it gets complicated, right? All of a sudden you have this little 5-year-old like worried that they didn't get invited to a birthday party, all of these things, and I was like, oh man, what do I do now? So what I was so lucky with my experience to be able to draw on how I talk to kids in a camp cabin and how I talk to kids in the classroom and all of my experience, and I realized I had this aha moment that it could work in my house as well.
And you have 3 kids.
And I
right?
do, and I have 3 kids, and I was thinking, you know, I need to share this with other parents. We all need help. But as you can see from the title, I don't take myself too seriously, and the last thing any parent needs is more parent guilt, because that comes the minute you have your baby. I don't know.
Does it?
It really just does. Like, you never
Oh,
feel like
no.
you're doing enough because the job is never done. It's one of those jobs.
Right.
So I didn't want to write any sort of book that said if you're not doing this, you're failing. I mean, and some of these really well-researched, beautiful books accidentally maybe have those connotations. I wanted parents to hear that if they're reading this book, I know they're excellent parents, they care. We're supposed to make some mistakes. I say that in the end of this book, that if you're making mistakes all the time, you're doing a great job because you're still trying. You're saying, okay, this isn't working, back to the drawing board, we're gonna try something else. So that was really my goal behind the book, and I wanted people to know before they picked it up that we were gonna laugh and it was gonna be an easy read. It's small, and that is by design. I wouldn't have picked up a big, thick parenting book. There's no time.
This is like the perfect size. I know. And short chapters. At the end of every chapter, you've got these key points for busy moms and dads. I love how you've summarized things because
Thank you.
you need those tidbits so they can
Right.
think about it when they're driving to school, or
Yeah,
they have something to
exactly.
think about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cute titles, Taming Tantrums After Toddlerhood. I mean, it's just, I love the layout and the conversation. It's like reading a novel, but it's real life. And even going through the in the table of contents, it's just really very clear about like your secret weapons, things that you
Right.
use, choosing appropriate consequences, parenting a child with extra needs, parent-child meetings, how to speak teacher, parenting each child differently, let it go. That's a really important chapter, I'm sure.
It is.
I love how it's so clearly laid out. Even inside of the table of contents, you have sub-contents, so people can go right to where they need something.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like
Absolutely.
a great reference book.
Thank you.
What's been some of your, what have you learned as a result of writing this book? How has it changed you as a mom and as a speaker and author, and how has it changed you?
So I've learned so many things. One of the big pieces of feedback I'm getting from readers is that
When's the next book?
they certainly ask things like that, but also just I think they feel validated and seen and heard, and how needed that is. You can't tell a parent you're doing a good job enough. It's not like those kids turn to you at night and say, good job handling that when I was time at dinner. Like, no, we don't get that, right? There's no quarterly feedback from your child. Sometimes the feedback's not great, and you don't want that either. So we need that validation. I think they appreciate my honesty. I think the fact that I share all the times I wish I would have done things better, I think that really resonates with them. And again, they need that like easy read structure. Really, those key points at the end came from the fact that I was studying for my social work degree at the same time, and I was reading all these textbooks, and here I thought I was like really focused, and then 30 pages later I was like, oh shoot, like what did I read? And I love that's how a textbook is organized, and you can go back to the key points, and then I went, oh yeah, okay, I know why I read that. So really that's where that was born. And knowing that sometimes as a busy professional, let alone a parent, any busy professional, you might pick up a book, read a chapter, love it, and not get back to it for 3 weeks, so you can go back and see what you read. So I got the funniest, messages from readers. One who was storing the book in their car because their time they had to read was the 10 minutes in the pickup line at school. They knew they had that every day. So they'd send me these cute little selfies of them in the pickup line. And I was like, great, like way to make use of that time. And it's been really exciting.
And they're really good short tidbits that you can share with the spouse or partner
Yes.
about something you learned, because you can remember that one thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the book. I really like it. I hope
Thank
parents
you.
take a look at it. Again, it's called I Love My Kids, but I Don't Always Like Them by Frankie Baghdad. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I know we've already come to the end of our time. Unfortunately, we could spend another hour talking, but I'd love to ask you one last question. You have a long career. You have a long career still ahead of you, doing so many wonderful things for people. I hope there's some more books in your future, even if they're novels. I hope to see more from you. The writing's fantastic.
Thank you.
But what's next for you and Fab Consulting? It's probably going to be some really amazing things, but as an entrepreneur, what's your advice to other entrepreneurs, because you're living that life right now?
I think the most crucial piece of my journey was connecting with everyone and anyone I knew remotely connected to my space. And I started to do it incidentally even before I decided to become an entrepreneur. But really my entrepreneur journey started when I got laid off unexpectedly, which so many people go through every day, in 2020 in September. And I started inviting people out to coffee to figure out what my next step was. And then I had this network of cheerleaders, and it made all the difference.
So connect with others.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. Great advice. Well, I want to thank you so much, Frankie Baghdad,
Thank you.
author, speaker, and owner of Fab Consulting. Thanks so much for being a guest on the program and sharing about what you're doing and your wonderful new book.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you'd like more information about our program, please visit us at MichiganEntrepreneurTV.com. Please join me again in the future when I interview another enterprising entrepreneur. Until then, wishing you the best of business.